I was forced back into the affluent Carter family, shackled by an arranged marriage to Adrian Carter. But his heart had always belonged to someone else, Sophia, the so-called heiress whose charm captivated everyone. Even the son I had given birth to after a painful and grueling delivery clung to her, calling her mommy, as if I were just a shadow in his life. On my 25th birthday, I sat alone in the dimly lit living room, waiting. Midnight arrived, and like clockwork, a notification popped up on my phone. Sophia's latest social media post. The image on my screen burned into my heart. Adrian, smearing birthday cake on her cheeks, our son giggling beside them. They looked like the picture-perfect family, the one I had always dreamed of but was never a part of. By dawn, I could no longer bear the suffocating emptiness. I packed my suitcase with quiet determination. Just as I was about to board my flight, my phone rang. Adrian's voice was sharp with irritation, and I could hear our son whining in the background, complaining about missing the breakfast I had made. "I'm leaving," I said, my voice steady. "Go through the documents and sign them." The documents I referred to were the divorce papers I had signed days ago. I told myself this was for the best. They would be happier without me. The morning of my birthday began like any other. I woke early, prepared breakfast, and saw Adrian and our son, Liam, off for the day. As they were about to leave, I hesitated before finally gathering the courage to speak. "Today is my birthday. Can you and Liam come home early?" I knew I was setting myself up for disappointment. It was also Sophia's birthday, the woman Adrian had loved for years. Asking him to choose was like begging for rejection, but I still asked. I stood by the car window, forcing myself to smile despite the lump in my throat. "Just come back for dinner, that's all I ask." Adrian's gaze was unreadable. His lips pressed into a thin line. Beside him, Liam mirrored his expression. Cold, indifferent. A moment later, the car sped away, leaving me standing there like a fool. They hadn't outright refused, so I convinced myself there was still hope. That afternoon, I went to the supermarket, picking out all of Adrian and Liam's favorite foods. Afterward, I visited the hospital to bring my grandmother home. She was frail, her body weak, but her eyes lit up when she saw me. By evening, the dinner table was set. The aroma of freshly cooked food filled the house. Yet, the seats remained empty. My grandmother, ever the optimist, reached into her bag and pulled out a gift. A limited edition toy race car she had bought for Liam. "He should be here soon," she said, her gaze fixed on the door. I tried to get her to eat, but she refused. "Birthdays should be spent together. We'll wait." We waited. From 7 p.m. to 10 p.m., the food grew cold, and so did my heart. Desperation took over, and I called Adrian again. After countless rejections, he finally answered. Laughter and music spilled through the speaker. "Do you need something?" Adrian asked, irritation laced in his voice. I forced down the bitterness rising in my throat. "Grandma is here. Please, come home and spend my birthday with me." His chuckle was sharp. "Jessica, don't be ridiculous. Today is Sophia's birthday. Don't ruin my night." Of course, Sophia, his childhood sweetheart, the woman who had his heart, and me, I was just the woman forced into his life. Through the phone, I heard Sophia's voice, playful and sweet. "Come eat the cake, Adrian. The first piece goes to our Liam, okay?" Then came my son's innocent voice. "Thank you, Aunt Sophia. You're the best. I wish you were my mommy." The word stabbed deep. A suffocating weight pressed against my chest. "Jessica." Adrian's voice faltered as if he wanted to say more, but I didn't need to hear it. I hung up. Forcing a smile, I turned back to my grandmother, who watched me with quiet concern. "Victor is busy with work," I lied, "and Liam had an extra class." She nodded as if she believed me, gently patting my hand. Together, we sat across from each other, cutting into the cake meant for a celebration that never happened. The frosting was sweet, so sweet that it made my throat burn. Soft candlelight flickered against my grandmother's silver hair, making her look like a delicate flame about to be extinguished. She reached for my cheek and whispered, "Smile, my dear. Be happy." Then, without warning, she began coughing violently. Before I could react, her frail hand slipped from my face, And then everything went dark. "Lucas's stomach hurts and he's asking for the porridge you made." Victor changed the subject, his voice filled with impatience. I could almost picture him on the other end, frowning with that stern expression of his. "I said let's get a divorce. Do you really think I'll change my mind over this, Victor? It's just a birthday. I'll make it up to you, all right?" Even after 6 years together, Victor still treated my departure as a joke. "There's no need. The divorce papers are already signed and on the desk in the bedroom." My voice was calm, steady. That's when he finally realized I wasn't joking. He let out a cold laugh. "Jessica, don't forget about the prenup. If you keep this up, you won't get a single penny." Ah, right. Victor had always assumed he could control me because he thought I loved money. In the past, whenever he threw out that warning, I would lower my head, apologize, and back down. But now, Grandma is gone. What good was that money to me? I used to foolishly believe I could change him. I poured everything I had into trying to warm his heart, enduring his indifference for the sake of our child. I made excuses for him over and over, suppressing the bitterness in my heart. Not anymore. Neither he nor our son were worth my sacrifice. I couldn't be bothered to argue further, so I hung up. For the first time in years, the world was finally quiet. Only the occasional voice messages from Lucas interrupted the silence. His tone shifted from commanding at first to softening, then finally to a teary plea. "Mom, what are you doing? Dad is already working so hard. Mom, when are you coming back?" I glanced at the messages and deleted them all. As for Victor, I knew he was waiting for me to regret my decision, to beg him to take me back. But why would I? Leaving them felt like escaping from stagnant water. For the first time in years, I felt alive again. In the months that followed, I started teaching children at a small village school. Before I knew it, the new year had arrived. The village chief invited me to his home to make dumplings with the children. Despite their limited resources, they slaughtered a pig and brought out their most precious things to share with me. Amid the children's laughter, my phone suddenly rang, vibrating in my pocket. It was Victor. I hesitated before answering. There was silence on the other end for a long time. Finally, a dry, hoarse voice came through. "Happy New Year." The sound of fireworks exploded in the background, drowning out his words. Just when I thought the call had disconnected, he spoke again. He cleared his throat, sounding a little uneasy. "Grandfather wants to see you." "Didn't you tell him about our divorce?" I asked. "Jessica, the company is about to go public. Can't you think about the bigger picture?" "So that's how it was." "No, I can't. You were the one who said from the start that this marriage was a mistake. Now I don't love you anymore, and I don't want to continue." I spoke decisively. 6 years ago, our marriage had been nothing but a contract. I should have known from the start. It was never about love, it was about business, about family alliances. No matter how much favor Emma had in Grandpa's eyes, she was still just an outsider. But now that the family needed me again, they came looking for me. I wanted no part of it. I never wanted to interfere in anyone's relationship. I had already walked away. But back then, when Grandma fell ill, I needed money. My so-called biological father threatened and coerced me. The night before I planned to leave with Grandma, they drugged my milk. That night, in a haze, I ended up in bed with Victor. Maybe the memory resurfaced in his mind because his voice turned angry. "Jessica, you..." There was no point in continuing this conversation. I was about to hang up when I suddenly heard Lucas's voice, nasal and urgent. "Mom!" His tone was rushed, filled with anxiety. When I didn't respond, he awkwardly added, "I'm sick." In the past, whenever he was sick, I would stay up all night tending to him. But now, I only replied flatly, "Oh, Mom, when are you coming back?" His voice trembled, the way only a child's could. "Mom, why aren't you answering my messages?" In the background, I heard Emma's voice, gentle and affectionate. "Lucas, it's cold outside. Come back inside." So, the divorce wasn't even finalized, and Emma was already spending New Year's at their house. The cold winter wind bit at my face, urging me to go back inside. "I won't bother you anymore," I said. "Wait," Victor hurriedly cut in. "She came on her own." So now suddenly he had explanations to give? Before, when I tormented myself over these little details, Victor would just watch me crumble, calling me a madwoman. "Mom, Dad and I got you a birthday present," Lucas's innocent voice chimed in. "A birthday present?" That was half a year ago. I had found it while sorting through clothes, tucked inside Victor's suit jacket pocket. A gemstone necklace. At the time, I thought it was for me, so I pretended not to know. I waited and waited. In the end, I only saw it around Emma's neck. Back then, I was heartbroken. But now, looking back, it felt like I was just an observer. Detached, unaffected. As Lucas cried and pleaded, all I felt was irritation. First of all, I wasn't his mother anymore, and second, if he was sick, there were doctors. Coming to me wouldn't help. Time passed quickly, and after the spring festival, the children returned to school. During lunch break, I patiently braided the little girls' hair, holding their hands and leading them downstairs. "Teacher, what are we eating today?" "Today we're having..." Before I could finish, a voice stopped me. "Mom?" I turned. It was Lucas. He had grown taller, but the arrogance was gone. He just stood there, staring at me. I ignored the desperation in his eyes. "Teacher? Who is he? Don't be silly. She's our teacher, not your mom." A mischievous boy spread his arms, blocking Lucas from coming closer. Lucas wasn't used to being treated like this. His eyes turned red, looking at me like a frightened little rabbit. I turned away and led the children downstairs. "Is everyone hungry? Let's go eat first." Yes. After serving food to the last child, I felt a small hand tug at my sleeve. "Lucas," he rubbed his stomach and said in a pitiful voice, "Mom, I'm hungry." "If you're hungry, go eat something," I replied indifferently. For a child to come all this way alone, Victor must have known, but I continued with my day, singing nursery rhymes and putting the children to sleep. Lucas stubbornly stood by the door, waiting. Then a child had a nightmare and woke up crying. I rushed over to comfort him. "Don't be afraid, it was just a bad dream." Suddenly, Lucas pushed the child away and grabbed me. "I'm so hungry, Mom." His voice cracked, filled with frustration. Afraid he would wake the others, I handed him a bowl of porridge. His eyes lit up instantly. He ate hurriedly, shoveling spoonfuls into his mouth. Back then, no matter how much love I gave, he ignored it. Now, suddenly, he wanted it. But it was too late. "You really embarrass me." That look on his face, it was the same as the one my biological parents gave me when I first came home wearing rough, cheap clothes. It was also the same expression I'd seen during my first dinner at a Western restaurant with Emma. She pouted, playing the spoiled princess, while Victor naturally cut her steak, handing it to her with a loving smile. Two worlds separated by a single table. Awkward and clumsy, I tried to copy him, using the knife and fork with all my might to cut the steak. But my posture was wrong, and I applied too much force. Stubbornness gripped me. I refused to admit defeat. Victor, meanwhile, wiped the corner of Emma's mouth with a napkin. When he looked up, his gaze met mine. Just that one glance felt like a balloon being pricked. Every ounce of forced confidence within me deflated into embarrassment. My plate tipped over, spilling sauce everywhere. It was a complete mess. Victor handed me a napkin, his expression neutral. I made an excuse to go to the restroom. As I walked away, Emma's tearful voice reached my ears. "Victor, are you going to be taken away by her too?" she whimpered, sounding like an anxious little rabbit. I froze in place. Victor's usual playful tone disappeared, replaced by a firm seriousness. "Little Emma, I only love you. As for her, if it weren't for Grandpa's instructions..." I ran. Panic overtook me, the words cutting deeper than I cared to admit. At 18, I was proud yet insecure, desperate to please and yearning for love. At 25, when Lucas was born, my world revolved around him. Now I live for myself. I stood quietly to the side, so silent I was almost invisible. It was only then that Victor seemed to notice my presence. For a fleeting moment, hesitation flickered in his eyes, but when Emma let out a muffled groan, his choice was made. "I'll carry her down first. Jessica, hang in there." Without a second glance, he rushed down the mountain with Emma in his arms, completely oblivious to the blood draining from my face. Hang in there. Those words echoed in my mind. In his eyes, I was always the one left behind. But unlike before, there was no sharp sting of betrayal, no lingering grievance, just a quiet acceptance. Later, in the hospital, the nurses around me chuckled. "I've never seen a patient so good at healing themselves. You might just take my job," one joked. I responded casually to the doctor, keeping my composure. The only one who seemed unsettled was Victor. His face darkened with every passing second. Finally, in a hoarse voice, he spoke. "You were hurt back then. I didn't know." His voice wavered. I thought you weren't seriously injured." I cut him off. "It's all in the past. You asked me why I can't forgive you. I'll tell you now, because every single time you chose to abandon me." With every word, Victor's face turned paler. The family soon sent someone to pick up Victor. Lucas clung to me, tears brimming in his eyes. "Mom, come home with us." Of course, I had to go back, but only to finalize the divorce. Since speaking with Victor was futile, I went directly to Grandpa. "Grandpa, it's time for this marriage between Victor and me to end. You know a forced marriage will never be sweet." Hearing my words, Grandpa's face fell, and he began coughing violently. He grabbed his cane and shot a fierce glare at Victor. "Did that boy do something wrong to you?" Without waiting for an answer, he raised the cane, ready to strike. "You little brat! Did you wrong her?" Victor knelt in silence, accepting each blow without protest. Watching this, I finally spoke up. "Grandpa, I'm the one who wants to leave." I pulled out a bank book and a card and held them out to Victor, but he refused to take them. In the end, I placed them on the table. "This is the money you sent me all these years. I never spent it. I never accepted your so-called compensation." His eyes widened in shock. "Back then, Emma stole my painting and entered it into a competition, afraid I would expose her. You used your influence to send me abroad, maybe as a way to silence me. Over the years, you transferred money to me annually." Victor stared at the card, his hands clenched into fists. "Then all these years, how did you—" "I worked." My voice was steady. "In Paris, I worked 3 jobs a day, washing dishes, taking any job I could. No matter how difficult it was, I never touched that money, because if I did, it would mean accepting that so-called compensation." I stepped closer, meeting his gaze. "I wasn't wrong, and you know the truth better than anyone. You ruined me so terribly. What makes you think I would ever forgive you?" I hadn't intended to cry, but as the words tumbled out, the emotions I had suppressed for years finally broke free. Tears streamed down my face. Grandpa, just realizing the full truth, clutched his chest, his expression filled with pain. "You ungrateful brat! How could you destroy Jessica like this?" Victor's voice was choked with emotion. "I'm sorry. I'll repay everything I owe you." A few days later, I understood what he meant by repayment. Victor publicly exposed Emma's plagiarism to the media. Overnight, the esteemed artist she had pretended to be was destroyed, her reputation reduced to nothing. On the day I left the city, Emma found me. The cafe was bright and spacious, yet she no longer radiated the confidence she once had. I ordered 2 cups of coffee. When the waiter brought them over, she hesitated before pushing hers away. "I'm pregnant. It's not good for the baby," she said, trying to maintain a proud demeanor, but I caught the flicker of anxiety in her eyes. I smiled lightly. "Then I wish you and your family of 4 happiness." The words were genuine, but the moment they left my lips, her expression shifted. Sensing something behind me, I turned around. Victor was standing there. Before Emma could react, he grabbed the steaming cup of coffee and poured it over her head. For the first time, I saw her completely disheveled. "Victor, how can you do this to me? For her!" she shrieked, unable to comprehend how the man who once adored her had suddenly changed. Victor didn't even glance at her. His eyes were fixed on me. "Jessica, the child she's carrying isn't mine. She's lying. There's nothing between us." I checked my watch. I have a flight to catch. I'm leaving. His expression collapsed, as if the last thread holding him together had snapped. You hate me so much that you have to leave? I gave him a cool glance. You're overthinking it. I don't love you, but I don't hate you either. Victor's car tailed mine all the way to the airport. When I reached security, I saw him standing at the departure gate, Lucas beside him, frozen in place. A passerby asked to borrow a pen, and I casually handed one from my bag. No need to return it, I said with a faint smile. Victor's expression darkened. He recognized that pen. It had been a gift from him back when he left for summer camp. That memory flashed through my mind. Me running through traffic to see him off, sweating, my makeup ruined, while Emma stood beside him, poised and flawless. Why are you just getting here? Emma had asked back then. The flight was moved up. Didn't Victor tell you? Hurried by his grandfather, Victor had awkwardly handed me a postcard. To Jessica, it read. Nothing more. Even then, I smiled. Thank you. I like it. Now, standing before him one last time, I wondered, what was he so upset about? Why did it matter if I gave away a pen he had once carelessly gifted me? As the plane ascended, everything below shrank in size, the past included. After I left, Victor found my journal in the trash. Only then did he truly understand how I had survived in France, how I had built my name in the art world, and how I had lived without him. Though he had the money and resources, he never once sought me out. Perhaps it was because of the one thing I had once told him. Can you please stop bothering me? The last time he lost control was when he rushed to the mountains overnight. But he stopped at the door. Inside, I was smiling. At someone else, a smile I had never given him. I had painted my journey, selling those paintings to donate the proceeds to children in need. He was the anonymous buyer behind the scenes. Yet, when invited to meet me, he cowardly hid in his car. Where's the buyer? I had asked. He just left, they replied. As Lucas grew, he wrote letters to me, but never received a reply. Years later, Victor stood outside my art exhibition, watching from the snow. Inside, a painting depicted a family of 3, all smiling brightly. And in that moment, he finally understood. What was lost could never be found again.